Hi everyone, good evening. Good evening everyone. Thank you everyone for coming along this evening. It is fantastic to see such a great turnout of people. As we know, there's one person missing tonight, so we shall raise a glass to him later on. We've got a rough running order for this evening. I'm going to waffle now for a minute. Roland's lovely lady Viviane is just going to come up and say a few words, and then I'm going to repeat the presentation I did at the crematorium. A lot of people have asked about that, so I've got that speech for me tonight. I'll do that, and then we'll have an open mic night, or not an open mic night, but we'll just leave the microphone open. If anybody wants to come up, say a few words about how they met Roland, or funny stories about Roland the first time they bumped into each other. Everyone's got a different story about Roland, so if half a dozen people want to come up and say a few words and make us all laugh, then feel free, we'll have an open mic. Viviane, if you would like to come up, please. I know this is going to be very difficult for you.
Right, well, welcome everybody. I'm not a person of a lot of words like Roland, but I'm so pleased that you could all come here to remember him, and remember him with a smile, because he was always making a joke of life. So I want you all to have a good evening, and it's so lovely to have you all here. So thanks again. So that's my little bit.
In case I forget later on this evening, a couple of thanks. Thanks to everybody who has sent in photographs that we've got running behind us tonight. Thank you to David Esp for putting the slideshow and all the presentation together. I know it's had a bit of midnight oil burning for the last few days to do that, but it's a great job. I've seen the video myself a few times. There's some great photographs in there. Thanks to Viv for the early photographs of him as well, and for everyone in the Caroline family for sending along all the ones in the past few years. So I'll start this. You may have seen this online from when I was at the service before, but a few people said how good this speech was. That it made them laugh. So I'll read this again for those of you who didn't hear it, or you just need a reminder of who Roland was. After me, Mandy's going to say a few words, and then we'll have an open mic if anyone wants to say a few words about how you met Roland and what his friendship means to you. Then while Mandy's on, if you just make your way out to the stage here, we'll do all of that. One of the other things as well is the buffet tonight has been paid for by Viviane, so you can show your appreciation for that, I'm sure. We're not charging an entrance fee for the meeting tonight, but we will ask that if you make a donation, all that donation will go into a donation to keep the ship going, and that will be in the name of Roland, and hopefully we'll get a plaque or something put on the ship in Roland's name, and then we'll see what we can invest on the ship as a memorial to Roland on a new piece of machinery. As you know, we're having to repair one of the generators at the moment, so possibly the new generator will be known as a Roland generator or something. I'm not sure. We haven't quite discussed that far at the moment. But anyway, Roland. What can I say about Roland? He was one of those persons you think you have known your entire life, but in reality, I think it was only been for the past 20 odd years. Can I just turn this game down a bit? Just start so we don't keep feeding back on every word. I've only known him for the past 20 odd years, possibly from about 1999 or 2000. I don't recall the first time Roland and I met, but we certainly knew each other in 2001, and I'm proud to say we've been good friends ever since. Roland entered this world in 1947, and on the slideshow, there's about 35-minute slideshow, and it's just going round in a circle, so it starts at the early part of Roland's life. So at the moment, we're on some of the later parts. Roland entered the world in 1947, one of the baby boom generation, and like almost all teenagers of all generations, music was to be a big part of his life. Living on the Kent coast in the 1960s, that music was to come from the offshore pirate stations such as Radio Caroline and Big L Radio London. Little did he know then, But this love of music and those renegade disc jockeys who brought it to him was to run and develop and influence him for the rest of his life. Upon leaving school at 15, he was taken to work by his father at Chatham Dockyard, where he was interviewed and soon became an assistant in the stores. A few years later, in 1970, he happened to walk into one of the dockyard's many offices, where his eyes met a pretty young girl who had just started working there. After a bit of persuasion by her friends, because she did have a boyfriend at the time who she had to get rid of, Viviane and Roland became an item, to use modern parlance. It was during the parental Christmas meal of 1971 that Roland, as always breaking of convention, announced their engagement as a done deal, even before he'd managed to ask permission from Viviane's father. Anyway, permission was subsequently granted, and they did get married. Apparently on the first date, he spoke constantly of his dog Peppy, and I assume that's Peppy that we have on some of the photographs behind us. Viviane was not sure how to take this when they kept talking about his dog, whether he was just a bit nervous and needed something comforting to talk about, or was just altogether a little bit strange. However, his love of animals, wildlife, and no doubt his sense of humour must have been apparent to her. Perhaps he also discussed his love of Gillingham Football Club. I'm sure Viviane would have been delighted by that on the first date. They spent the next 52 years of their life together. By 1982, with redeployment at work, Roland and Viv moved here to Romsey, where they quickly set up home and made many new friends. With his practical skills, Roland quickly became known as the man who can on the street and was often helping friends and neighbours fix their little practical problems. His entire working career was with the civil service in the Ministry of Defence, initially based at Chatham Dockyard and latterly at Winchester Barracks. It was towards the end of his working career, with retirement looming on the horizon, that he and I first became acquainted. It was around this time that Caroline, having been shipwrecked on the Goodwin Sands in the Thames in 1991, was starting to make a comeback and re-emerge into a new world of new technology. The fledgling internet was around, mostly with low-speed dial-up modems, which I'm sure we all remember. Satellite television was starting to make multi-channel TV and radio a household item. The internet made it quite easy to research and look at things from your past, and somehow Roland became aware of the continuation of Radio Caroline and started to take an interest. Somehow, we also became aware of each other's presence, relatively close to each other here in the Southampton area, and along with the nearby presence of several other supporters, Bournemouth, Portsmouth, Reading kind of area, plans were made for a meet-up. Somehow they were hatched, and on the 7th of September 2001, 4 days before the 11th of September 2001, there was about a dozen of us met for the first time at a hotel in Bournemouth. Plans were hatched for a further meeting, but Roland then became aware of an existing meeting in the Southampton area from a small group holding occasional meetings. Plans were the two groups combined, and probably as much by fate as by luck, Roland took on the task of organising things. He accomplished this with his usual sense of determination and gusto, and so the Caroline Southampton support group meetings were born. From that early start 20 years later, we have a thriving community with regular meetings, fundraising, talks by special guests with attendees from all over the UK, including flying in from the United States and Europe. And we do have from Los Angeles tonight, and also from the Netherlands, two special guests who are with us this evening, so thank you for making the trip for such a long distance. Roland became a regular volunteer member of the ship's restoration crew, where he was quickly recognised to be a source of endless energy, enthusiasm, determination and humour, jokes and various antics. He could turn his hand to almost anything, from waving a paintbrush to unblocking a drain. When the great days of retirement finally arrived, Roland had a fabulous ready-made hobby to throw himself into. There was always organising to be done, ships paintings weekends to arrange, materials to be bought and delivered, merchandise to manage and post, festivals, meetings and events to be promoted and attended, recordings to be made, edited and uploaded, and of course great friendships to be made. As a result of the many friendships made, he found himself flying to California not once nor twice, but 3 times in all, both for holidays with Caroline friends there, but also to meet and interview legendary radio names such as the Emperor Roscoe. The Caroline exhibit at the Cotswold Motor Museum was one particular favourite that he oversaw and regularly attended, and he enjoyed talking to the many visitors about the history of Caroline and the fact it still exists to this day. It is with his time on board as part of this weekend, it's part of his time on board as part of the work and weeking parties, but I'm going to draw a couple of anecdotes. Graham, who is not with us tonight, unfortunately, says, originally Roland would just drive up to the ship at Tilbury for the day and return home in the evening. Goodness knows only what time he must have left the house, because it was not uncommon for us to be woken from our slumbers by somebody clumping around upstairs in the early daylight hours, trying all the external doors in turn. One of us would then have to extricate ourselves from a bunk, pull on some clothes and open a door. Roland would then make his way to the galley, where he was constantly perplexed as to why the hot water tea urn wasn't working. Given that such things usually work better when supplied with electricity, that was a cue to go down to the generator room and start the generator for the day. Those familiar with Roland might not be surprised to learn that this happened not just once, but on several occasions. Eventually we managed to persuade Roland that it was not good for him to do so much in one day and that he should stay on board overnight. This was then convenient for him because he could visit his football at Gillingham on the Saturday and come out to the ship on the Saturday evening and stay over. At this point I should describe the cabins and bunks on the Ross for those not familiar with the layout. The crew cabins are downstairs and below the waterline. There are no portholes. So when we shut down the generator at night, darkness is all around apart from a few emergency lights. And most of the cabins, the bunks are quite high up on the wall where the hull curves in underneath the bunk. The bunks are quite enclosed to prevent the crew being thrown onto the floor in rough weather, with just a smallish gap to squeeze through to get in and out of the bunk. It has been described by many as climbing into a coffin or sleeping in the coffin to get to a bunk. Anyway, the method of getting in and out of the bunk can be tricky to say the least, and it is a very good idea to work out your method and routine on how to do it, and certainly not leave your first attempt until it's pitch dark and all the lights have gone out. But anyway, come the great day, Roland's first stay overnight. Understandably, he was quite excited, and he'd taken cabin 5, which was next to Graham, who wrote this in cabin 4. Graham says he was already in his bunk when the generator went off, but it soon became clear that Roland was not ready. With only 2 bits of varnished plywood acting as a partition wall between the cabins, there's not much soundproofing. Graham records he could hear rustle, rustle, rustle. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Clunk. Ow, my head. And yes, there was a gap between the clunk and the ow, my head. Followed by more rustle, rustle, rustle. Rustle, rustle. Clunk. Ow. Followed by I can't get my leg over, as he was trying to climb into the bunk. By this time, of course, everybody in the entire ship who could hear this going on, we were in hysterics in their own cabins, and the tale has long been known as the going to bed ceremony. Thanks for that, Graham. Throughout his life, Roland managed to keep some of his boyhood cheek amongst his humour and had an amazing ability of double entendres and construction of sentences that the rest of us could never dream of using. On board the ship, he would regale us with humorous incidents that happened elsewhere in his life, including the time he had reason to call round to one of his neighbours, and I'm pleased to say that one of his neighbours is here with us this evening. While approaching the door, he noticed they had a new annunciation device fitted to the front door. As the lady of the house opened the door, he remarked, in his innocent but cheeky style, "Ooh, I was just admiring your knockers," while pointing at the new door fittings. Or there was the time, on a particularly hot day, after an uncomfortably warm night, making idle chat over the garden fence to a neighbour about the weather, and he commented that he had struggled to sleep due to the heat. Only Roland would be able to keep an innocent straight face while asking his neighbour if she was also hot in bed last night. He was like a real-life carry-on movie at times, completely politically incorrect. No one else could get away with it in this day and age. There was also a time when he was out in a supermarket, but he accidentally started to take someone else's shopping trolley, and I know Mandy's going to elaborate on this one a bit. A simple mistake that any one of us might mistake, and immediately followed by a hurried and humble apology. But Roland's luck was that he wheeled the trolley away and started to fill it with his own products before the irate lady came chasing after him and caught up with him and accused him of taking her trolley. "No, it's not," he said. reaching in and picking a few items with you just placed there as proof that it was his trolley. He then spotted items of intimate underwear that she had bought and said, "Oh, I seem to have your underwear." To say he was a character would be an understatement of the highest order. His infectious energy, enthusiasm and ability brought a smile to all those around him. He appeared to everyone to be in the finest of health and showed little sign of slowing down. Like the proverbial Duracell bunny, we all thought he could go on forever. It was a total shock to everyone to hear of his sudden, unexpected passing. Our deepest thoughts to Viviane and her family who are here tonight, Viviane's sister and brother-in-law and long-term friends. God bless you, Roland. You are one of a kind. Mandy will now say a few words as well.
Well, thank you everyone being here today. I know Roland would be really chuffed to see what a fantastic turnout there has been. And of course he brought this meeting from just a handful of people to the success it's been today. So we thank Roland for everything. And thank you so much, Viviane, for the spread in front of us. I know the only thing that Roland did used to worry about was it going to be enough for the sandwiches and everything? So no one's going to go without today. So I'm sure he'd be absolutely chuffed. So much expect to see Roland here today.
Roland also used to worry every meeting. Sorry. Roland used to worry every meeting about, I hope somebody turns up. It'd be embarrassing if no one turned up for a meeting. And it was like, Roland, every meeting is packed to capacity. People are going to turn up. Don't worry about that.
Absolutely, and look how many people turned up today, and it's just grown. It's unbelievable. Of course, as Alan touched on the subject of the recordings and just about everything that Roland did for Caroline over the years, it's just been fantastic. Well, I met Roland out on the Ross Revenge as part of the Ross Revenge crew back in the late 2007. And I know that he and I remember him saying he was vegetarian too, so he always used to bring some vegetarian meals out to the ship. So we put something in the oven, and Lee or myself. And then we'd, I remember also a picture with Viviane as she walked through, as we went through towards the galley and to the mess room. There was a lovely photograph that he pointed out proudly. That's Viviane there with myself. So many memories out on the Ross Revenge. One of the funniest things when I think back was when I was outside painting on the deck one day, and Roland came around with his camera, I think a little video camera he had at the time, and he'd been chatting to me and asking me where I'd been on my holidays. And I said, I've been to the Maldives and I've been to Bali and just come back from Mallorca. And then he said to me, gosh, you've been to so many erotic places. And that was Roland. He kind of was cheeky, but you could get away with it because it was so fun. So gradually, I might have thought in the beginning, now who's this strange guy? But we became great friends. And everyone, he touched everyone who was involved and knew Roland. You couldn't help but laugh, and he brought smile and sunshine into just about everyone's life. So those are my early sort of memories of being out in the Ross. Also the stories he told us, which we kind of doubted at one time, didn't we, Alan? We thought, and then we realised since then that all of them are true. One time, as Alan was saying about the supermarket, I think he was out with Lawrence, who's not with us here today, but they were out shopping. We used to call them Laurel and Hardy, Lawrence and Roland. So they were like a double act when they got together in the studio. They would just chat away and joke away. So one day he was telling us about the time, this is way before COVID era, when he went out to get a mask, because, we were working needle gunning, angle grinding, all the paint chippings, we had to have some masks. So he went along to the supermarket, put them what he thought was a bog-off offer, you get one free, from these masks. And then Lawrence looked at him and afterwards, and I think it was Lawrence who turned to us, that's not masks, that's those padded ladies' bras. That was Roland, He said, never mind, you could just cut them in half and you can use it anyway. It was very adaptable. And then the other thing that we always found was fun whenever we were out on the Ross Revenge, and I was thinking about this because a couple of days after my birthday, just recently, went out to the Ross and we had a cake that was left from my party. So we kind of were cutting that around the mess room table. And it was a cake cutting ceremony. Roland was always so generous, would bring us everyone a cake and didn't want anyone to be left out. So we'd always make sure, and he'd spend ages dividing it up, making sure we all had an equal portion of cake, because he cared so much about everyone. That was Roland. So that's something that always stays in my mind. So many happy memories, and I think it's a legacy of Roland will definitely live on here through the Southampton meetings, and no one's ever going to forget him. He's touched all our hearts, done so much for Caroline. over the years, and so much for all of us, because none of us could help. Even if we had a bad day, we'd always end up smiling whenever we saw Roland. So thank you so much for everyone today who's been here. Thank you to Viviane, thank you to Alan and to Derek and Keith, and we all hope to keep the meetings going and do our very best in our own humble way to follow in Roland's big footsteps that he left us.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
A couple of people have asked me up to now, are the meetings going to continue? The answer to that one is yes, absolutely. If you want to give a show of hands as to whether we should continue the meetings, then I think it's unanimous. Absolutely. Roland did such a great job. Fantastic. Derek and Keith have offered to take on some of the arranging, as has Mandy as well, and I'll be involved, so it might not be quite as good and efficient as Roland's meetings were, but we will try and continue the meetings. Next one we'll try and have before Christmas, beginning of December, something like that. So one thing what we don't have at the moment is we don't have access to Roland's email list of everyone who attends. So one of the things today of asking you to register your interest in coming along is so that we can get your email address again and build up a new list of attendees. So can you make sure before you leave that Derek or Keith at the back have actually got your email address and contact details so we can start off with a new list for everybody and invite you back to the new meetings. In the future, and I say hopefully we'll have the next one by Christmas. There's one other tale that I didn't put in at the crematorium. I didn't think it was the right place to do it, but Roland, because he worked in the army barracks at Winchester, we were putting new mattresses, or we wanted to put new mattresses in the bunks on the ship. And Roland looked at the bunk of the ship and says, "Oh, we've got mattresses that'll fit those perfectly," says, "in the army stores at the barracks in Winchester." I said, "Yeah, but we can't take army mattresses and put them on the ship." And Roland said, "Oh yeah, we've got loads of them, we never use them now, we're just sitting gathering dust in the corner." He said, "Come and pick some up." And I said, "Well, how do I come and pick them up?" He said, "Well, just drive up to the army barracks," he says, "and at the big security checkpoint," he says, "there'll be a couple of guys there with machine guns, but just tell them you come to see Roland in the stores." So anyway, I drove up there in my car, and there's a guy points a machine gun in the window at me and says, "Yes." I said, "I'm here to see Roland in the store." So he says, "All right, very good, on you go. Turn left, it's first on the road." So anyway, drove up. Roland was stuffed about, I think it was 6 of his mattresses in the back of my Cavalier I had at the time. So the entire back of the car, the boot, everything was just full of his mattresses. They were literally sticking out the windows kind of stuff. And I said to Roland, "How do I get out?" And he said, "Well, just drive up to the gate." He looked at me very confused. He said, "Well, you just drive up to the gate and leave." I said, yeah, but don't I need a chitty or a slip or a permit or something to take, like, army goods out?" He says, No. He says, "The guys with machine guns won't mind." So anyway, then I'm driving up in my car, two big blokes with machine guns look in the back of my car and they say, "Yes." I said, "Oh, I'm just disposing of these mattresses for Roland from the stores." And we look in the back, the entire car's full of mattresses, and we go, "All right, very good." I just opened the gate and let me out. So here we go. My heart was beating at that moment.
I can really imagine it must have been. I can't believe here, because obviously we're not going to be doing any lotteries today, but it's kind of like, I always think of Roland and drawing the numbers, do you know what I remember?
Yeah, we're doing no merchandise tonight, but Albert and Georgina have brought some calendars, because obviously if you want next year's calendar, you're better off buying them tonight rather than into next year. So no merchandise on tonight. As I say, we're doing a collection that will be in Roland's name, so please give generously for that. No raffle, but if you do want a calendar, do see Albert and Georgina, and you can pick up a calendar tonight. And then for the next meeting, we'll have merchandise.
And Roland will be so, because he cared so much, didn't he, about the Ross Revenge. He was always up there on the scaffolding. Nothing was too much trouble for Roland, would he?
He would even lean over backwards and climb down the side and go skipping. And
doing just about everything. Yeah. Well, me, but one time Viviane and Roland made me so welcome when I came over invited back to their place after one of the meetings. He told me he had a goldfish called Mandy, do you remember? And I think that's because I never stopped talking. Yes. So that's for me to say goodnight and wish anyone else who wants to come and join us.
Anyone who wants to come and say a few words, please make your way forward. You don't have to put your hand up, just make your way up to the forward.
Thank you, everyone.
There we go. You can hear me now? Yeah, P. Well, as probably everybody knows, I met Roland at one of these events when you were having it down in the other hall. You probably all remember that. He persuaded me to bring the shop along when we were doing all the merchandise. And you probably remember me lugging everything out of the car and him helping and, you know, all this, that and the other. And, you know, and I thought, well, what a guy. You know, everything he said to him, he turned into a joke, no matter what. And I always remember he came and stayed at us a weekend when we were doing an event down in Brighton-Sea. And there was, next to our stall, there was a kiddie's bouncy castle thing. Well, you'd never believe Roland on that. He was bouncing up and down, you wouldn't believe it. And then we took him out for a meal, and we went into this local place, and he saw on the menu, he'd got North Sea cod, fillets and chips. And he called the waitress over, he said, "How do we know that's North Sea cod?" And she didn't know what to say. "Well, we don't." "Well," he said, "you've got to advertise as North Sea cod." He said, "So I want proof that that's North Sea cod." And he just heard, you know, she stood there and, "Who's he?" We turned everything into a joke. But, yeah, good guy, badly missed. Miss him running up and down here tonight. And I think everybody here will miss him. And all the money and that he raised for Caroline. And you'd never believe it. Alan mentioned the calendars, I weren't going to, but as Alan mentioned them, yes, buy them tonight and put your £2 in postage into the pot for Viviane for all the food. How's about that? Because that's what you save tonight if you buy them tonight. Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Gordon, and I've known Roland, must be 60, 61, 62 years, something like that. And I got so many memories, obviously from the football, Gillingham, because we always went to football together. And we've been on holiday back in the 60s, funnily enough. We ended up going down to Dina Marina in Italy, and there was we'd been to Spain. We'd done lots of things in those days, and he was always up to some kind of antic or other. However, so we were good friends, and of course we followed Gillingham ever since the beginning, you know, of those teenage years. The story I wanted to tell you was. Well, I followed Caroline since about, sometime around just after Easter, 67, when we heard, 64, when we heard the signal and we were listening to it. And then, of course, Radio London came along shortly afterwards. A bit of competition there. And the story I wanted to tell you was that when the Marine Offences Act came out, because Roland and I were very good friends of Caroline, we were listening, watching, and we were together over in Clacton. His mother and father had invited me over for a long weekend up at Jaywick. It's just up the coast from Clacton, and we were walking along the seafront. And I said to Roland, I've heard there's some ships, there's a few little fishing vessels go out to Caroline. How about going out there? Because Roland said to me, well, he says, but it was after August the 14th. He said it was about 10 days later. And we decided I said to him, come on, we've got to go out. And I persuaded him, we must go. And so we found out it was the ships, the little fishing boat was supposed to be a fishing trip. But there were quite a few Caroline followers going out there. And it went from just up the coast they didn't want it to go from Clacton because, of course, at that particular time, the Marine Offences Act had come in and they didn't know whether they were being watched from the shore by the police, they were worried, or even from the Coast Guard, which is just up the coast at Clacton. And so I said to him, come on, we're going to go. So we made some inquiries and we found out it was going at 7 o'clock in the morning. So we had to get up. We're only teenagers, you know what that's like. Anyway, we did get up. We called down. We was at, I'm just trying to think now, it's up from Clacton. Oh dear, There's three, isn't there? There's Clacton on Sea. There was Jaywick, Clacton on Sea. There's two more, isn't there? Come on. Frinton and Walton on the Naze. That's it. So Walton on the Naze. So we went up there. It was a very bright, sunny day in August, and so we got on board. I don't know how we get up there, but anyway, and we was on board, and they said we're going out to the ship, but we must tell you, because now Caroline is basically, in inverted commas, illegal. We can't go alongside like we used to. We used to take people alongside, and sometimes you could go aboard. I don't know if anyone ever did that, but you could do that then. But he said you can't. Anyway, so we said okay. But when we got on board, I saw all these tarpaulins that were at one end of the fishing boat, and it was right at the very, very end. And I said, "What's under that lot there?" And Roland said, "I don't know. So I said, "Oh well, we'll keep our eyes on that." So anyway, so we sailed out, and of course she was just outside the 3-mile limit. Anyone remember that? And we got out there, and we were coming off the ship, and you could feel, when you go out to the ship, there's the hum of the electricity and the generators. It's very strong, and you can feel the electricity. I don't know, I'm sure some of you have done that, gone out there, you can really feel it on your chest. You really can. So anyway, we got out there, and when we looked back at shore, the skipper came out with a little bit of a message, and he says, there's a bit of a fog bank on shore at the moment, and he says, we're going to go alongside. And this is where, in the summer, it comes down off Clacton. Anyway, so we went alongside, and he said, well, we need volunteers, we've got to hold on to the chains, because on the Mi Amigo, as you know, the little boat's going up, and it's going down, and we're getting actually covered in this brown rust. You know what it's like. And anyway, so there we were, hanging on like hell, and this was 9 o'clock in the morning, right? And out of the studio came Roger Day. He had just done the breakfast show. And he said, and then the next thing we saw, we were hanging on to the chains because we had to secure the boat, the fishing boat going up and down. And he said, right, we got stuff to get on board. So at that particular moment, we were just one of the volunteers hanging on like hell. There was Roland next to me, and up and down it was going. And you had to be very careful because those chains, you could really hurt your wrists on the minute it hits the ship. So anyway, all the tarpaulins came off, and Roger said, quick, everybody. And they had some guys on board, and Robbie Dale was doing the 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock show. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And Johnny Walker had, actual fact, they told us, because I said, where's Johnny Walker? Can he come out and talk to us? Because he had done the 9 till 12 and the kiss in the car night, etc., that we all used to know. And he said, no, he says he's a bit under the drunk. He says he's gone to bed now. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Roger's just done his breakfast show. So Robbie Dale come running out to help us get the gear, all this stuff on board. All of a sudden they pulled the tarpaulins back, and there were, you won't believe, there were bags and bags of potatoes already there. There was Heinz, 57 various varieties from tomato soup, you name it, vegetable soup. There was that. There was bags of potatoes, bread. There was stacks and stacks of bread, good old sun-blessed stuff. And there was some beers and things, different bits and pieces. And that was all being hauled on board. And Robbie Dale come running out. He says, I've put a long player on to help you get it all on board. And then, of course, the long player was running out, and he had to run back in. You know the old story of, I've got to get the old needle's going to come off, and it's all going to mess up. Anyway, so there we are. So we unloaded all this, and then all of a sudden the captain made a quick announcement on his mic. He says, the mist is lifting. He says, we've got to go. And so, of course, everything off the ship was unloaded, the potatoes, you name it, carrots, big bags of carrots. So there we are, that's what they lived on, and baked beans, And I remember Johnny Walker always used to be moaning, we got too many bloody baked beans on board. That's all they had to eat sometimes in those latter days. Anyway, so there's a true story, and I went with her, and then of course we had to get off the ship, had to get away, and back to shore. So this is a story, this is a true story, and that really did happen. And that was part of our life, to be interested and following Caroline. And we've been out, we used to go out to Caroline many times, when Caroline was at I think when it was a Southend pier at one time, and then we also went out when it was offshore. When it was the Ross Revenge, of course. We went offshore, and we went on one of these It was the Waverley. Went out on the Waverley, and there was a disco on board. Had connections with Caroline, and there was music played, and of course it was full of Caroline helpers, supporters, and there we are. That's another experience where we had. And there were some good times, and of course Roland was always so keen on Caroline ever since the beginning, and obviously right to the very end of his life. But he was a really good supporter. Anyway, I hope I haven't bored you with a big story, but that's a true story.
Evening everybody, nice to see so many people here tonight. I just wanted to tell you a few recollections about my time with Roland, because I first met Roland in 2005, and it was really weird because he came up to me at the Maidstone Studios and he said, I'd like to volunteer to help you on the Tuesday evening request programme, which is it used to be called the 60s and 70s request programme, which I do with Barry James, who is at the back, and we alternate every other week. So I said, well, your timing is fantastic, because the guy that helped me the first few years had got a job as a bus driver, and he said to me that very week, I can't help you anymore because I'll be doing shift work. So anyway, I said, well, that's great, Roland. That's 2005. He helped me for 11 years. So I got to know him quite well during that 11 years. And do you know what? He only missed one night that I can remember, and it was to watch Gillingham. Because Gillingham, he said, I hope you don't mind, but in 2 weeks' time I won't be able to help you because Gillingham are playing, and I want to go and see my team Gillingham play. So that was quite incredible. But anyway, I got to know him quite well during that 11 years. And the thing that amazes me about him was how very good-natured he was. I never heard in that 11 years that we worked together every fortnight, he never moaned about anybody, he never bad-mouthed anybody, he never ran anybody down, he never said anything bad about anybody. And I said to him one day, I said, you know what, Roland? I said, I've known you for years and you've never said a bad word about anybody. And he said, well, what's the point? So, that's what he was like. But anyway...
It's not the Roland I knew.
Okay, well... maybe he was different at Gillingham Football Club. But he honestly didn't moan about anybody. There was one... the only funny occasion I could remember is that he used to get the... songs for me, because basically what happened back in those days, it was very different from how we do the programme now, because the requests used to come in between 9 and midnight, so it was a hectic show. So you would get emails and phone calls coming in during the evening, and you've got to find the songs.
And faxes, the fax machine.
And faxes, So he was a great help to me. But on one particular occasion, the only funny incident I can ever remember, as I was speaking, there was this massive thud. And he was leaning backwards on his chair and he'd fallen backwards. And there was this great thud. And I said, it's all right, everybody. It's only Roland's fallen off. Viv, if you're listening, he's all right. He's just fallen off his chair, But he was so reliable, as I say, in 11 years he only missed one evening. But he would be really shocked tonight because he was a very modest guy. And he would be amazed that you're all here about him. That you all come here tonight because of him. And one last little thing I want to mention. This just shows what a thoughtful person he was. He phoned me up. Sadly, it was a week before he passed away. And he said, I know you haven't been to the Southampton meeting for a few years, but I really want you to come this year. Ray Robinson is coming all the way from California, and I want the three of us to be together like we were in the good old days in the past. And I really would like you to come. And I've organised a lift for you, which he did in fact do. And then sadly, a week later, he passed away. So I just want you to know that, that's what I think. He was totally reliable, and he was good fun to be with. And this incredible enthusiasm, it wasn't his show. I mean, he was helping me, but he never missed a night. Apart from that one time we went to see Gillingham Football Club. So anyway, I wanted you to know that's the side of Roland that I remember. He was very enthusiastic. And he loved Radio Caroline, and he did so much and spent so many hours helping, and he helped to make that a very popular programme on a Tuesday night. He played his part.
The question has to be, when he took the night off to see Gillingham, did they win or lose?
I
Was
can't
it worth
remember.
taking a night off?
I honestly can't remember. But
We probably lost.
I honestly can't remember. But that was the only night I ever remember him
Not being there. And for saying he was driving from Romsey to Maidstone and back every time.
Again,
It's
which was
amazing.
He was so incredibly dedicated to Caroline, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd never actually realised he'd been on the Amigo in 1967 until tonight. I didn't know he'd actually taken a trip out there, so he'd never mentioned that to us before, so there we go. We learn something every day. Thank you.
That's
Clive,
fine,
fantastic.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to say anything? Yeah. Okay.
There's one thing that I missed. I feel terrible if I missed that. But there's one thing also on the ship, apart from all the vegetables and the newspapers and God knows what that went out there, under another big sack that was all in a big, it was massive, it really was massive. It was full of plastic, and it was full of records that had come from Parlophone, from Colombia, you name them, they were there. And there was tons and tons of records, and I thought they weren't allowed to promote new music on Caroline.
And the record companies all said the pirates were naughty because they were stealing
That's
copyright.
right,
But they were quite happy sending all the songs out to get played.
They needed Caroline. There we are. That was it.
Brilliant.
No more. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no problem. Fantastic. Anyone else want to say, Ray, you've come all the way from Los Angeles. You and Roland met Emperor Roscoe together.
Yes, indeed we did. Hi, I'm Ray Robinson. Some of you may know me. I first met Roland I'm not sure what I met, but online we met in 2007. Way before there was the official Listen Again facility, we were uploading recordings of Caroline programmes, and we kind of got talking through messaging and so forth with that. And something just clicked, and we really struck up a strong friendship. He, as Alan has said, came over to California 3 times on different trips, and yes, we met Emperor Roscoe. I was able to arrange with Roscoe that we went to his house, and he's got an incredible studio there, and CDs stacked floor to ceiling in multiple rooms, and he was very gracious. We went out for a meal together. Roland also met Tony Paul over there, and Caroline's attorney, Nigel Pearson, and some of our Caroline listeners. Steve Tuffel has been on the pictures here, and Ed Newfer we met, and maybe names that you remember. And then I was invited back here, and I think I've been to 4 or 5 of the meetings at Netley. This is the first time I've been to Hamble, but I went to 4 or 5 of the other meetings. And Roland and Viv were both very gracious to welcome me into their home. It was a nice experience, and I've met so many people through Roland. It's made my life richer. I have to remember, when he came to California the first time, I quickly found out that he'd been a lifelong vegetarian. That was very important to Roland. And I remember going shopping with him the first time, and we were in the supermarket, and we were going to buy some eggs. I said, "You do eat eggs, right?" And he said, "Well, depends. Do they come from happy chickens?" So we were there looking at the eggs, and there's this lady a bit further down the aisle stacking shelves, and he goes up to her and he says, "Do your eggs come from happy chickens?" She's sort of looking at her. But from that day to this, I have and my wife, we've only ever bought free-range chickens. That's been important to Roland, and he taught us something, so that was pretty unique. You may know I do the Caroline Archive Hour on Saturday and Sunday evenings. That started in June of 2020, and it got started because of Roland. Roland knew that I had quite a large collection of archive recordings, and he also knew that Alan Sheed was a dab hand at doing restorations. He hadn't done that many back then, but he'd done some, and they turned out pretty good. And so he kind of put two and two together, and he said, you know, you and Alan, you ought to get together and put these recordings on Caroline Flashback. I said, well, I don't know how I could do that. I said, I don't know Mike Brill. I know he runs the channel, but I don't know him. And so Roland and Steve Anthony got together and talked to Mike, and somehow got a nod. I think Mike talked to PM, and eventually they said, you can go ahead. So Mike Brill gave me the okay for 13 weeks. And the idea was that was a trial, and if it worked out, so good. But we could always do some repeats after the first 13 weeks if there wasn't any more material. But it would never have started without Roland, and now we've been going for about 3.5 years, almost. So my thanks to him for that. But Roland had many, many friends. I'm not like that. I don't have lots of friends. I have lots of acquaintances. But people I could truly call friends, I could probably count on my two hands. Roland was one of those. He was so close, so special to me, and I was exchanging messages with him just the day before he actually passed. So it was a shock to everybody, but we're really, really grateful that he's made our lives richer. Now, I don't know if there's any bar staff back there, but there's something behind the counter that I want to give to Viv. Just a little something, but I hope you Also, it's her birthday tomorrow, everybody. I meant to take them up there. Anyway, there we are, there's some flowers for you. Happy birthday.
Anyone else wave a hand if you want to come say anything? One more. Derek's going to come say something, and then we can start on the buffet, and then we've got a couple of hours to mingle. I'll also mention the music that's playing in the background tonight. These are a strange selection of music. These are all songs that we knew Roland liked. So some of them are a bit odd, some of them are a bit predictable, but they're songs, and Roland, there's many tales of Roland dancing around the mess room singing some of these songs.
He always used to tell me to play Vampire Weekend. You should listen to them, they're really good. And he was right.
He was right. So yeah, if you listen to some of the music tonight, you think, why on earth are you playing jazz and the only way is up? Then you've not lived until you've seen Roland dancing around the mess room doing the only way is up. Baby. Right, that's enough of me. Derek.
Hi there. I'd just like to represent the anorak community here tonight, because one thing about knowing Roland is that all you guys here are real, well, leg ends to quote Tony Allen, but people that bring Caroline to us. And I think we must be so grateful to you, so grateful to the Caroline community and Caroline family, and thanks to everybody, to Roland, yeah? Cheers.